Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another Quips and Thwips. Vance, how you doing? It's only been a mere 15, 20 minutes since I've seen you.
It feels like an eternity, my friend.
Oh, it always is. For those of you who don't know, we just recorded a trailer reaction to the Into the Spider-Verse, or I'm sorry, Across the Spider-Verse trailer or first look that just came out. So if you haven't seen it yet, jump on over to that video in when we're done here or now. Just pick, uh, do another tab and listen to us yammer on. Anyway, so Vance, how have you been? We are now continuing down our countdown to No Way Home. This is big, exciting times.
It is, because this is this your favorite Spider-Man out of all the Spider-Man that have come and gone? Besides the, of course, '70s Spider-Man, you know, and the Japanese version.
I still prefer that one over Toby Maguire.
What are you talking about? So you're making them all depressed. What are you
Yeah,
talking
well, he's
about?
always depressed. I mean, he's always crying too.
Hey, those are Academy Award winning tears.
Yeah,
Time
I'm
is going to
sure.
tell on that one.
I mean, there's an Academy Award winning kiss in those movies, but I think Kirsten Dunst did all the lip work on that one.
Oh, I wouldn't touch that woman with it. Anyway,
I mean, not me really either. I'm not that anyway. Okay, so back on track. Um, so yeah, this week we're going to be talking about Tom Holland, and I know we're going a little early but we went this past Monday because of all the stuff going on, and now we've got we were planning on doing this today, and then they dropped that trailer first look on us, and but so this is
it,
we're sticking to our guns on this one.
it was perfect. It was perfect timing. Like my phone crapped out of me, and we were like, we don't know if I could actually do this on Tuesday this upcoming week. And then we were like, let's do this today. And then the trailer dropped. It was like, man, this is the gods opening up, saying, here you go, guys. You're doing something right. You're blessing NerdTube. So perfect timing to do something like this. So yeah, let's get into the Tom Holland stuff. So he shows up in Civil War as you know Iron Man's plucky sidekick.
Yeah, impressionable underoos.
And again, like I love the meme where he Captain America yells at somebody for um, you know having such a young sidekick, and then all of a sudden he's beating the shit out of Spider-Man. You know, um,
She's just a kid.
yeah,
And 5 minutes later with Peter, bonk. Yeah, so I just to really to explain like the ground rules on this one is it's a little bit different because obviously we have MCU Spider-Man Tom Holland. And so what we have here is we are going to talk about all of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. That
yes,
includes all of his MCU Avengers outings, which include Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, as well as his individual movies, which include Homecoming um and No Way Home or Far From Home.
far from
Far
home,
From
far
Home.
from
There
home.
we go. So yeah, so and as you can see, we have worn our spider apparel this week, and we are
Yes,
definitely loving on the spider. So yeah, Civil War. I have to say, I there was a way, and I don't want to talk about the movie in general, but there was a way that a lot of stuff could get lost in the shuffle here, and in this movie, they did a really good job at shining a light on everybody.
yeah,
And it's actually really cool the fact that we got Spider-Man in this movie. And if you think about it, we didn't get a lot of them.
no,
Like this was not like a big origin of Spider. Like he was already Spider-Man. He was already well, no, he was already a version of Spider-Man. He was already kind of doing his thing. In his little, janky hoodie outfit. And yeah, and then Tony came and enlisted him, and made him turn this plucky little sidekick into a super friend.
Well, the thing about this movie, if you remember going back, he was written in at the last minute.
Hmm.
They had two drafts of this movie, one with him, one without, because they weren't sure if they were going to actually be able to do this. And so when you look at it in historical context, I mean, now we take for granted that he was there, and we're like, oh, this of course makes sense. But the reason that they didn't give him an origin story in that film was you really didn't have a place to put an origin story in that film. And so, I mean, it just didn't make sense to do it that way. So to do it this way, it was really kind of the only way to do it and still have the film make sense.
Yeah.
To
Well,
kind of. Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say, and well, I mean, I'm glad. I think it was better for it because
Yeah,
I mean, between all the other iterations of Spider-Man, we've kind of been done. Uncle Ben's sick of dying. Like, I mean, he's sick of dying on screen. I mean,
yeah,
so I really do appreciate the way they did this. I appreciate the way they introduced him, but also keep in mind they introduced Black Panther in this
yeah,
movie as well. I
yeah,
mean, we had two major comic book figures, and I consider Black Panther. I know some people consider him B list. I think he's A list. I think he's been A list for a long time, even before the MCU.
yeah,
Even before Black Panther the movie and everything. I always felt like Black Panther was a part of the Illuminati. He was a part of, Wakanda's always been a big part of the Marvel lore. So in the comic books, I'm surprised that we got an Iron Man movie before we got a Black Panther movie, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. He has such a huge following.
Hmm.
And for me, like honestly, I've never heard of him. But once I started looking into it, I agree with your assessment. It's like why have you waited this long? Because
Hmm.
you talk to anyone who knows Black Panther, and they're like, dude, how can you not? It's kind of like Moon Knight. Like anyone who knows Moon Knight, they're like, well, of course this guy makes sense. And it's like, well, who is he? And then once you explain it, it's like, oh wow, this does, and that's kind of the territory that we're delving into with Marvel is. Um, they have such rich characters, and now they're just basically just kind of running through the apple trees, just kind of picking apples, just running
Yeah.
through, grabbing whatever they want now, and that's kind of this movie. When you look back at Civil War, Spider-Man has his own movie inside the movie because the
Hmm.
movie has nothing to do with him, and he's not really an important character, but his arc is important for that character. Because again, when you look at that, everything he does and everything he's in is important for him and sort of for the universe, but it's not important for Civil War. I mean, he's there, and obviously he's fighting in the battle and everything, but I mean, they really didn't need him. I mean, they could have taken the story where he's not there, and it wouldn't really have changed much of anything.
He kind of evened out the ranks.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but it is one of those things where, like, you know, the main part of that story was at the end of the fight. Um, Tony, Steve, and Bucky. And there's really no room for Spider-Man. I mean, when we
Hmm.
think back about, oh man, this is where they introduced Spider-Man. Well, yes, but I mean, Spider-Man was just kind of there.
Hmm.
It really wasn't that important to Civil War as a whole in that movie. You know,
And honestly, that's kind of. But here's the thing, though, is that Spider-Man's one of those characters that you know his origin, you know him. You don't need that. Like that's why I'm glad they introduced him
yeah,
this way because it would have just convoluted everything and
yep,
just been a whole nother thing. And it's just like, guys, we know this.
yeah.
Like, let's just say he's been doing this for 6 months, and Tony tracked him down, and Tony decided to bring a 16-year-old or 15-year-old kid to Germany to fight Captain America and get his butt kicked.
The most responsible thing to do, right?
Absolutely, Tony Stark is known for his responsibility of problems.
Right, right. So the next time we see Tom Holland was it Infinity War?
No, Homecoming. He had his solo outing. Yeah, Tom Holland had his solo outing, and this is where I kind of get a little hairy with this version of Spider-Man. Tom Holland is I want to say he is my favorite Spider-Man. However, his movies are not my favorite movies.
Right.
And I've probably told you about this a million times, and probably people who have ever watched this podcast know that that they know that I am not a huge fan of the villains, only not because they were badly acted, not because they were miscast, but because of the way that they were used in the movies. And they felt like both of them, Mysterio and we'll get into him later, and Vulture felt like Iron Man leftover villains.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wasn't entirely feeling the movie itself because of that. I felt like, and I know that it was in service of this Spider-Man in this universe, but I really had an issue with it in these because I if there's one person I'm picky about, it's the Webhead.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's different in the MCU. I know, but I'm still gonna be like super picky about it because he's the first comic book love of my life. So
Well, the thing is, like, I was not a fan. I agree with you. I think I think the one thing that I'm not a fan of, like I'm a fan of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I'm not a fan of his movies. This is the first time that I'm really, really excited for a Tom Holland Spider-Man
Me too.
movie. And it doesn't really have much to do with Tom Holland. Sadly, it has to do with everything around him, which is kind of opposite of you, because your big issue with the Tom Holland Spider-Mans are everything else seems to be kind of just falling from other things instead of establishing him. Um, I love him in Civil War. I love him in Infinity War. I love him in Endgame. Um, I'm not a fan of him in his two movies because it seems like they're just kind of lackluster. Um,
Well, and he's always, but and even just like the villains, even the characters. Like in the first one, you had Iron Man poking his head in, and for narrative and character standpoint, I understand why, because he gave him the suit. He was in Civil War. I understand, but then we go into no Far From Home, and you've got Nick Fury and all that. Nick Fury and Maria Hill in there, and they're kind of, and it's just like and honestly, Spider-Man is a New York hero,
yeah.
okay? And we have hardly had Spider-Man in New York City. We've had
Yep.
him in Queens, and it was fun in this movie, Homecoming, that we're talking about, where he's like, he's swinging through the suburbs and like he hits a treehouse and he pulls the treehouse down because he webbed it, and the treehouse just came down and he falls, or he falls in the pool at the party, and okay, that was fun and that was great, but at the same time, it's like we have not had Spider-Man in New York City as a superhero, like except at the very end of the second one,
Well,
in
and
my opinion.
that's where they should be distinguishing between the two. Um, it should be the fact that when you reach into for Civil War and Infinity War and Endgame, those should be the times where the MCU reaches in and plucks him out and puts him in the in the big universe where he's kind of looking around going, what the f did I walk into? When he's in his own movies, that's when he should be swinging around the city, kind of, your
Mhm.
friendly neighborhood, and as the movies progress, that's when he should be getting out and expanding himself as a superhero. Right from the get go, they just keep plucking him out. They're like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we did that? Well, but you haven't shown that. I mean, you've talked about it in Civil War about how for 6 months he was swinging, doing stuff in this weird hoodie thing, but you haven't established it. You haven't shown it, and it's one thing to to show it instead of say it. And that to
Yeah.
me, it's just you haven't shown that part of Spider-Man. And the thing about the very first movie that he was in, um, what was it, Homecoming?
Yes.
Yeah, is I love Michael Keaton. He was my
Oh
favorite
yeah.
Batman. He's a great actor. Mr. Mom, great movie. Multiplicity, a bad movie, but I loved it anyway. Um, is It's a very forgettable movie, and I love Ned. He's one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Um, but it's a very forgettable movie to me. I don't remember anything that happened in that movie. Um, so I don't. To me, and that's the second one wasn't so bad, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But I remember what happened in Civil War. I remember what happened in Endgame. I remember what happened in Infinity War.
You just can't remember the name.
Yeah, yeah, or the order they go in.
Yeah.
But I remember those things. I don't remember what really happens in those other in Homecoming. I don't. I watched it once and I was like, I don't want to watch it again. I'm good.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and since you brought up Michael Keaton, I have to say, Vulture is a villain that has always interested me, just because he's supposed to just be this old dude with wings flying around. And I do like the way, and this is going to be another case where the villains are actually better, I feel, than the actual plot. And um but I just don't like the way that they were utilized as being leftover Iron Man villains. I mean, both of them were. Michael Keaton being this scrapper who then all of a sudden, is starts his tech empire. and then well, the underground tech empire with all the the Shatari stuff that he found in New York, is a great idea. But then it's just like, but what's his motivation?
Right.
Ah, Tony Stark, Tony Stark, Tony Stark. It's like I why couldn't you have like Spider-Man stumble upon this without Tony Stark's help, and then have him foil Vulture's things, and that makes him a Spider-Man villain? No, it's all about Tony Stark with him, and it's just like, and I understand why in this movie sense that it's like that, because I have no bones to pick with Michael Keaton. I love Michael Keaton. I thought he was a great Adrian Toomes, but the problem was is that it was all about Tony Stark. You could
Well,
have. Oh, go ahead.
the one thing, and it was a comic, and I've got quite a few comics from, uh, and I'm not sure what it is. It was, I'm not sure which one it was written by, but the one Vulture story that stood out to me that I have, it's where Peter, the Vulture's flying through the city, and it's on a snowy day, and Peter's kind of, it's a Spider-Man, but he's kind of swinging through, and he stops, and he's looking at the snow, and these kids are kind of fucking around, and they throw a snowball at him, and the snowball hits him in the face. He's like, oh, just my luck. And then so he starts swinging around the city, being Spider-Man, and it's very internal monologue. But halfway through the story, like the Vulture shows up, just kind of out of nowhere, and Peter's like, oh, great, this guy again. Can I catch a break? And the whole thing is just very humorous to me and very lighthearted. But the Vulture's like, meet us where we first had, where we first met, or I'm gonna blow it up. And he flies off. And Peter's like, really, dude, really? And Vulture was like, meet me there in 30 minutes, or I'm gonna blow it up. And he flies off. And Peter's like, really? So then, like, it shows like a half hour, and Peter's just kind of sitting there on this lamppost, and he's looking around. And then it shows like 40, it shows the time passage of like 45 minutes, 1 hour, 1 hour 30 minutes. And Vulture flies up again. He's like, dude, what are you doing? We didn't meet here. We met. And he names what a place. And Peter's like, oh, right. Oh, okay. Shit. But to me, I always found that type of humorous, because I'm like, that is the perfect Peter Parker. So I was waiting for something like that here, because like I never really took Vulture seriously, but I always felt like Peter always had that type of relationship with most of his villains, of like, they don't like you and you don't like them, but you guys are all just kind of in the losers club,
Yeah, the misfits. They're like
Yeah,
misfit superheroes and villains.
yeah. But like Michael Keaton, and again, I love Michael Keaton, but there was none of that here. I was like, oh man, like where's the fun? Like I read in that comic, it was really terrifying. Like, oh man, I was waiting for Vulture to be like, I'm Batman. Like, oh shit, you know.
Yeah. No, I know. I feel like it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. And that's why after that movie, I was kind of sitting there going, man, I kind of wish the Vulture was the leader of the Sinister Six instead of Doc Ock. Like I feel like Michael Keaton could do it. He could unify the five other villains and be a menacing Vulture, whereas the
Yeah.
Vulture was kind of like a joke in the like in the comic books and stuff, and even in the movies sometimes. But like I really feel like that Michael Keaton could have done it, and that I was kind of excited for that.
Well,
Um,
well, like when you read a Batman comic book, you read it because Batman is, he's the Dark Knight detective. He's investigating, and he's got these evil villains, and they're gonna take over Gotham or blow it up or something. And when you read a Spider-Man comic, at least for me, his villains aren't that. I mean, they can't. When you get to the level of like Green Goblin, they can be that. But at least from what I've read, and the ones I have and keep and go back to over and over and over, they're fun. They're just as, like I said, the or like you said, the misfits. I said loser, but you said misfit, and I think both are, tit for tat. You know, um, and that's the fun of comic books. The stuff that you would read in the 70s or the 60s, or the fun from childhood that I feel is not there in the comic books today, where everything is just so serious in tone. And when I go to Homecoming, there was none of that fun from him, where That is known to be in the MCU, the fun, the lightheartedness, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see where you're going with that, and I agree that it's you know, that you do need that kind of aspect of it. But I was very excited in this movie that they were taking the Vulture seriously, like they were taking him seriously. Not that he was acting very serious, but he was being taken seriously.
Well, I was excited on the fact that we're getting somebody that we haven't had before. Somebody that,
Yeah,
hey, the fact that we're not just rehashing the Green Goblin, or we're not just rehashing, Venom again. We're not just giving, they are doing something different. It's kind of like if they have another Batman movie and they don't, they give us like Mr. Zaz, or they give us ventriloquist for a movie where it's like, well, that's interesting. I look, let's go take a look. When you give us something different, otherwise, they give us, oh, here's Batman and another Joker. I don't want that. I mean, we've seen that like a
yeah, we've
million
seen the Joker a
times.
million times.
Yeah.
Actually, fun fact, which I'm pretty sure you have noticed in the past, but um, I mean, they have this is the first movie upcoming, No Way Home, where they've actually reused villains. If you think about
Yep.
it,
Yep.
well, except
Yep.
for the Green Goblin, I'll give you that one in Amazing Spider-Man 2. But I mean, Lizard, Electro had never been used before, in the Maguire movies, and then obviously in the first three, Venom, Goblin, Sandman, and Ock never used before, and then Mysterio and Vulture, they had never been used before either, in the movie. So until this movie that we have coming out in a couple weeks, we've never had a repeat villain in all honesty. So I mean, this will also be another interesting spin. Not only that is it this rehashing these villains that have already come before, but they're also kind of like not even reimaginings. Like, they're actually the characters from these other movies.
Straight
So
up. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, it's going to be interesting. That's one of the things I'm interested about, because these are supposed to be versions of these characters that we know and love. And I'm sorry, I mean, I agree with you. I like Jamie Foxx, and I was excited for his Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2. I felt like it didn't deliver very well. However, I am definitely on board with giving him another chance. Like I'm very on board with that, because I like Jamie Foxx, and I don't ever blame him for the fiasco of Amazing Spider-Man 2, in my opinion. I know you liked. I did not like it at all. So I mean,
It's only because of your love for Tobey Maguire that you are blinded to your love for Jamie Foxx. So
yes.
if anybody has a mesh of Tobey Maguire and Jamie Foxx in a poster like that, let's give Cheeto
Oh
that, because
yeah. I want, if anyone has a picture out there, Maguire Fox. That's what we
I
want.
let's make that into a Subway poster. I will buy that for Cheeto. I will out of my own pocket. I will make that happen. So.
Maguire Fox.
Well, let's put the NerdTube logo on that. Let's fine print that. Let's make that happen.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so
Infinity War.
getting back on track. No, actually, I do. Before we move on to Infinity
Okay.
War, I do want to talk about Aunt May, because we've had several versions of Aunt May, and
Uh,
this one in here we have Aunt Hottie.
the least hot, because we already talked about Tobey Maguire's was the most hot. That we've already talked about. That's settled law.
Okay. Okay, so the least hot Aunt May in Elvis Spire. I'm not a huge fan of Tomei's Aunt May.
No.
No. Um, I am a big fan of the original from the Maguire verse. Even I always get them mixed up. Is it Susan Sarandon, or is it?
I'm not sure. I
I
don't
don't.
know what her name.
The,
I don't know what her real name. All I know is like Happy.
no, no, no. In the Garfield movies.
Oh, Sally Field. No, Sally
Sally
Field.
Field.
Sally
That's, I
Field.
always get that wrong.
Yeah.
I actually like the Sally Field one too. I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of Aunt Hottie. I feel like I get it. Like, there's always been this weird thing with Aunt May where she has to be old, and it makes no sense, because like Aunt May looks old, as in like 80 some old, but
Yeah.
yet it's his aunt, and yet her Aunt May's sister was like in her third or in her 20s when she had Peter. So I would put them in their 40s, late 40s maybe, when Peter was, 15, 16. not in their 80s, and Aunt May was right around the same age as her sister, Mary.
Yeah.
So it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Absolutely not. It makes no sense whatsoever. And I understand that the MCU was like, look, Marisa Tomei, she is in her 50s, early 50s. Aunt May is probably in her late 40s, early 50s. I understand. She's hot and she's an aunt now, but I don't know why. I just like having the old Aunt May. You are correct. Tobey Maguire, Aunt May, hottest one. Confirmed. But I'm not a fan of this one just because I don't know. She just doesn't feel like Aunt May.
To me,
Um,
I always felt like, because I don't know the ages of people. All I know is when I look at her, I'm like, you honestly look like you are the older sister of, Tom Holland. I don't get aunt from her at all. Like I don't, when I saw her, I was like, hey, okay. I mean, it's fine, but I mean, you look like you're closer to Tom Holland's sister than you are his aunt. Like, I mean, you don't look like you're closer to my age. And I feel like it's a little sickening to have her kind of dating Happy. I'm like, dude, check her ID, Happy, because this feels wrong to me. Like, dude, are you like, Aunt May is like, first off, Aunt May feels like she's like 20 years older than Happy should be, and this feels like she's 20 years younger than Happy is. Like, this again, this just, no,
well,
you
it
know.
doesn't, and she doesn't give me the Aunt May, the feeling of Aunt May.
Mm-mm.
Like she you're right. She gives me the feeling of Peter's older sister feel.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't feel like it's Aunt May.
no,
So, and that's why I'm kind of like, I don't mind Marisa Tomei's character in there. I just don't want her as Aunt May.
no. If I'm being honest, like, in the real world, like, both of these guys look like they'd be sitting out on the couch, like, smoking weed or something, like, just chilling. Like, it doesn't, like, this is not the Aunt May that, and again, I know they're trying to break the stereotype, hey, we want to break, what the norm is, but I think there's something that can be said about something that's someone that's just a little bit older rather than someone that's like, you know I don't know. Like, I mean, again, I have no problem with. I mean, her acting is great in the movies. I feel,
Yeah.
what she does, her chemistry with Tom is wonderful. But there's something that's just a little bit off every time. I'm like, this visually. I'm like, I don't. Hold on, my dogs are playing here. You go ahead and talk. I'll be right back in 2 seconds. I'm gonna boot them out of the room. Give me a second.
Okay. But yeah, so with Aunt May, I mean, that is it that big of a deal? No. Is it a deal breaker? No. But I agree with Vance, is that, yeah, it doesn't feel like Aunt May. It feels like it's Peter's older sister, or I don't know. It just doesn't feel like, that Aunt May wholesome goodness. Baking some pies on a Saturday morning, packing Peter's lunch when he goes to school. And I know I'm just hard to please. I get it. Spider-Man's my hard to please. I can't help it. So yeah, the other there was another thing. Oh, Shocker from Homecoming. So I don't know if V-Man can hear me, but like, it's Shocker was, I felt like, was very underutilized. And did I need him to be this big bad villain and throughout the whole thing? No. But and Shocker's always kind of a joke villain. But at the same time, it's like, at least do him some justice. I mean, he fought Peter in the bus yard, and outside the school, and it was kind of a joke segment, in my opinion. That was the real joke. Like, Vulture wasn't the joke. Shocker was the joke. um so I really don't feel like they gave him the Shocker much justice. And even the first, I think his name was like Herman Schultz. Even the first Shocker was killed off, and then they gave it to the second one, and I'm like, I'm talking about Shocker. I don't know if you were listening.
No,
um
I kicked my dogs out, and
Well,
that
that is
was
not
that.
nice to say about Royce. I mean, come on, man.
Oh, no, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so what about Shocker now?
Just, I felt like he was very underutilized. I felt like he was a joke character in the movie in Homecoming, and I really felt like they didn't. Shocker's actually, there's actually, and you know what? I was going to bring some comic books for this one because I wanted to talk about Shocker. There was there was a Peter Parker Spider-Man run where it was, I think it was 2 or 3 issues where Shocker not only had the gauntlets, but his whole body was like infused with like the shock stuff. So like Spider-Man couldn't touch him. And it was very interesting how they upgraded Shocker. And I just felt like, and I felt like the Shocker was actually like a decent villain at that point. Um, and I really felt like in this movie that they just turned him into a joke. They killed the first Shocker, and they gave it to another dude. And there's like, oh yeah, you're the Shocker now. Like,
Yeah.
what?
See, you told me about that. Like my only knowledge of the Shocker is from the Ultimate comic books, and I loved it because it was a fun moment, and you and I were talking about it off camera, I think last show. Um, and you brought up, I was like, I think they should have done, I think they should have brought someone like the Shocker and someone less known. And you were like, oh, well, they did. And I was like, what? And again, that's how easily forgettable this movie was.
Yeah,
And some of the references, because I didn't realize. And again, I don't know why, if it was me just not paying attention, or if it's that they didn't do the translations properly. I don't know what the problem was, but I mean, this movie, I don't think it was good. I think it had a lot of really good elements. Ned being one of them.
I really like Ned. Ned's really good.
Yeah, no matter what scene he's in, he steals it. Him and MJ both. And that's the one thing. Like the support system for Peter, I feel is the one thing where you bring up the villains are the downfall for the movies, and I agree with you 100%. I don't think they're the stronghold. I think the support system Peter has, which is why I feel in this movie, if Ned does become Hobgoblin, fucking tip of my hat, because I feel like that's where good meets the bad, and this is the perfect flow for this Peter. Um,
Well, and that's Harry Osborn. Like that will be this Peter
yes,
Parker's Harry Osborn, and I'm on board
absolutely,
for it
yeah,
because if Ned Leeds turns into the Hobgoblin, you're right. It is definitely the friend turn on friend, and it's
yeah,
if they do it right, I'm on board.
yeah. I hope that's what they do, because honestly, like the fact that the dude knows all Peter's secrets, he knows exactly his strengths and weaknesses. And it's something that most people won't realize. Like I did not know that he was the Hobgoblin. But I was like, man, I hope this guy turns. I hope. And you're like, well, he's a Hobgoblin in the comic. I'm like, holy shit, what? Like, and that's you said it perfectly. That's this guy's, Norman or
Harry Osborn.
Harry Osborn, and that's perfectly said. And it's something where most people like me, I wouldn't know that.
And I
You
and
know,
I don't want them to shoehorn it in this upcoming movie. Like
I don't.
if they want to tease it at the end of the movie and like a post credit or even during
Yes,
the
after
movie,
credit. Yeah,
like or if they just want to kind of start leaning that way, but like do not shoehorn that in this movie. You
yeah.
in this upcoming movie. You cannot. If you do, I will be severe. And I trust in Marvel Studios. I trust in Kevin Feige. But this movie coming up looks like it is going to be a big swing, and they're either going to knock it out of the park, which I'm 90% sure they are, or it's going to be a clusterfuck.
I think this is probably going to be the best Spider-Man out there. Honestly, I mean, I know nobody's going to say, "Well, Vance called it right here, and he was pure prophecy." It was like Nostradamus, and nobody cares, you
Vance
know.
Perdamus.
Uh, Everybody get the T-shirt, Um,
You
you
got
know,
the beard.
now I feel like I need like one of those like wizard hats, like
Yeah.
Lord of the Ring, like that's a long robe, you know. Um, but I feel like that's what Homecoming did right, is it gave him a bunch of stable characters to support him. MJ especially. I'm a little thrown off by it's not Mary Jane. And but to me it's like I don't really care, because it's like those are those I gotta go pee problems, where it's like it's very easy to fix. Who cares? At the end of the day, does it really matter? It's still MJ. So
I
just move on.
I beg to differ.
Really?
I do. them trying to pass. I don't care. I don't mind Michelle, as you said. I don't mind Michelle as a character, but the fact that they're trying to pass her off as MJ, I would rather them just not have MJ. Like,
Mm,
make this Michelle character just Michelle. Don't try to pass it off as the new version of MJ. Just be
mhm,
like, look, we're introducing this new character, Michelle Jones. Not MJ, not Gwen Stacy, Michelle. Michelle,
mhm.
don't even call her Michelle Jones. Like, don't do MJ. Like, that's just pandering and stupid, in my opinion. So, I mean, like, I don't. I like Michelle as a character, but if they're going to try to pass this off as this MJ, yeah, go fuck themselves. I'm not for it. I would much rather them just introduce this brand new female character. That, I mean, why didn't they make her Betty Brant? I know Betty Brant's an actual character, but like, why not? Betty Brant was Peter Parker's first girlfriend. So like, why not? Why not make her Betty Brant?
I don't know. Like, there's I wonder if they would have changed it from being Michelle to being actually MJ, or maybe Betty. If it had been an actual MCU, or if they had had the longer term Marvel agreement, with Sony. Like, if it had been like right now agreement, where fucking Venom's brought in, and they can, they now have a long term understanding. We are doing this stuff long term, instead of, well, a couple things and then we'll see. Because I don't think they'll ever break their handshake agreement, because you look at what happened last time when they were supposed to split, and that was a clusterfuck. That,
Yeah, it was.
as I don't think I don't think either side's going to break from this deal ever.
I think, well, and I also think that break was also public negotiation tactics. I also believe there was some of that in there too.
Oh, I mean, the thing, I think both sides realize both sides lose if this fall. So neither side's going to let this go. Which is why both sides, I think, are willing to go forward. So I think if this was done right now, Civil War, and they were to write some of this stuff in, or Homecoming, whichever, and they brought these characters in, I think you'd see it very differently, in terms of their approach in that regard. Um, so I don't think we'd get Michelle. I think it would be Mary Jane, or
Honestly,
Ned.
I would want them to go with Gwen. I'm sorry. Like, but here's the thing. In high school, Peter, Gwen, and we don't even have a Harry. Ned is the Harry Osborn. Michelle is the Gwen, is almost like the Betty Brant, Gwen Stacy type.
Yeah,
But honestly, I kind of wish they would have done that. Like, there's a great show. We've talked about it on this program before. It's Spectacular Spider-Man. If you watch that cartoon, it's like they have Harry, Peter, Gwen. MJ's introduced in the first couple episodes, but they have that camaraderie between the four of them that was in the comic books in the 60s. Like, they had this great thing going, and I wish they would have translated that to the MCU.
yeah.
And I get it. I think you are right. I think they were kind of tiptoeing around the fact that this is going to be different because they don't want,
Well,
like, go
it,
ahead.
it, my interpretation, and this goes from having worked in from fan film perspective, and knowing, okay, I can allude to this film without actually stepping on these people's toes, but I
Wait a
can get
minute. You
away
do
with it.
fan films?
Yeah, I know you'd never know because I never bring it up or talk about it. But I allude in certain films that I know, okay, this is going to piss this person off if I actually talk about. So, you allude to certain things, but you also kind of, oh, well, I never technically said it. So when you look at, especially, Homecoming, and how they approached it, if Sony never actually wanted to, you know, everything that's in that movie is something that is probably 99%, or at least 90% of it is stuff that, if you were to kind of cut loose and take Toby Maguire, or not Toby, Tom Holland, um, you would never even have to reference any of that stuff. You could let it go and say, that's MCU stuff. We're doing our own shit. Here you go. Come on, Tom. Most of that stuff you would never even have to, and you could say no, it still exists. It's kind of like the Daredevil stuff, the soft reboot that they're doing for the supposed series. They say, oh no, we're still keeping the actor, but we're doing something. It's a soft reboot. Well, no, it's not.
Multiverse, baby.
Well, it's not really a soft reboot. I mean, you can still have the other stuff there. It's just going a slightly different direction. Kind of like how Batman Forever still references the stuff from the Michael Keaton movies, but you have a different actor playing Batman. You have a different actor playing Harvey Dent, but you still have same Alfred, same Commissioner Gordon. There's still the same references to the stuff that happened. The killing of Joker, but Gotham looks different. So it's a soft reboot and you have things that are different, but they would do something very similar if they had cut ties. So when you look at the movie, there's clearly things that were done in case they ever did cut ties, but it's something where no, here you go, we're being generous in how you do the movie. So it's kind of a win-win, but then when they actually did try to cut ties, no, it's a loss for everybody. So I think if they were to do it now, it would be very different from what we got.
I see what you're saying. I mean, and I agree. I mean, I didn't think of it in that way, but I agree. I think that you're right. I think that maybe if they did, if this was a long term agreement from the get go, like you're right, we might have gotten more of a not not so much of a departure. But as I said, I like Ned Leeds. I like Michelle.
Yeah.
I just don't like, I just don't like them trying to pass off Michelle as MJ. Like, don't even do that. Just have it Michelle,
Well,
whoever.
well, and it does bring, it does it does make you wonder, like going forward, like do you kill her off here, and then we have MJ, Mary Jane, and then all of a sudden, oh, I'm dating another person named MJ. I mean, that's just fucking weird, or do you have her say, well, my name's not really Michelle, it's really Mary Jane, and I mean, then you have kind of
God, I would hate that even more almost.
well, yeah, because then you have a very John Blake, moment from Dark Knight Rises where, oh, my real name's Robin, like what? Like that's just don't make it weird, just yeah, so
Just
it
go
really
with it. Yeah, just like yeah.
yeah, just it really yeah,
You've committed, roll with it.
exactly. That's why I say that's why I say I have no problem with it because you've already done it. Just, I got no problem with it,
Yeah,
because
don't try. I mean, well, and what happened with Shang Chi? Like, when they tried to fix the Mandarin, like it was just not trying to get on rabbit trail, but not a knock against the actor who played Mandarin. It was all in the writing. It was all in the
yeah.
plot, and it was a joke. Like they screwed up the Mandarin twice. Like no, just okay, just take what you have and roll with it. Don't do any plot twists. Don't do anything. Just you fucked up and just own it and just go. you know, like yeah. So I mean, now I wouldn't mind if they introduced like a Gwen Stacy,
Yeah.
because that's a yeah. I mean, that would be fine with me. And they
Yeah.
do have a Betty Brant. Maybe they make the actress who plays Betty Brant more of a prominent role. Like I mean, these are all Spider-Man's got so many freaking characters. It's not even funny. So I
Or
mean,
here's a thought. Maybe at the end of this, when time, if time is, every villain is sent back and time is kind of crushed and whatever happens, maybe Michelle becomes Mary Jane out of the time, and time is fixed and healed, and you know
all of a sudden, like the Little Mermaid, like all of a sudden, all the magic goes around her, and she like turns.
her hair becomes bright red, and I'm now Mary Jane, and it's like, what? That doesn't even make sense.
She's like, "Hey there, Tiger, you hit the multiversal jackpot."
You heard it here first from NerdTube, guys. It's see, we give you a little bit extra here on NerdTube. That's what it is,
Yeah,
that's why you come here, guys.
something like that.
So okay, into Infinity War.
Hmm.
Um, it was we are introduced to uh, you know little Stark's
Little
Mr.
Starks.
Middle Middle Stark. God damn it. Mr. Stark's little boy gets the Iron Spider suit.
Which is straight out of the comic book from Civil War.
And I gotta say, at first I hated it. I thought it was a piece of crap, but it grew on me. It really did. I loved him tweak around, and it was pretty cool.
I did enjoy. And see, this is my thing, is that I don't enjoy Spider-Man in the solo movies for the reason that there's too much there's too much MCU influence in those.
Mhm.
But then when he's in Avengers mode, like, and he's in those movies, he's fine. Like, because that's what's supposed to happen. You know, like
I, I, lo- the best thing about the movies, like Civil War or Infinity War, is the fact that Tom Holland has the best oh shit face and oh shit voice,
mhm.
and especially like when he's up when he's up on that whatever it is, the satellite or whatever, and he's just like and he's looking around, and he's just like, I mean, again, Peter Parker is best when he's out of his element, which is 99% of the time, and I think Tom Holland really nails it, um, because he's just like, what the fuck is it, God, oh man,
I'm
you know,
flying into space. What the hell?
yeah, and I love it because it's like, I don't necessarily need that for his movies because again, friendly neighborhood. But when you get to these movies, that's when it's so funny to me
Yeah.
because it's like he doesn't know what to do, and realistically, neither one of us do. I mean, I feel the same way when my wife sends me to the grocery store, and 5 hours later, I'm still circling around the same aisles, going, "Where's the paprika? What the fuck am I doing here?" So I mean, I can relate to that feeling, and I love it because I mean, he's
Hashtag
got.
find the paprika.
That's exactly it, dude. I'm gonna text you next time. I'm gonna send you a selfie next time I'm in the grocery store because especially this year, since I've been with Royce, in dad mode, and Mona's been studying, I've had to do that a lot more, and I've spent hours needlessly in that damn grocery store. I don't know where I'm at. I still don't, and I feel just as helpless. But that's what makes those movies so great. Is he's completely out of his element, and now he's got this giant iron spider suit. What? What is that? And it's so great because, we know it's the iron spider suit. He has no idea what the hell it is, and that's awesome. You know.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. He's like, it smells like a new car in here, Mr. Stark. I'm like, God. And I'm just like, oh God. I'm like, it's so funny. And yeah, I mean, but that's the kind of stuff, like, as I said, like, when you have a like 30% Avengers, 70% Spider-Man in a Spider-Man movie, you have a problem. But when you have like a 30% Spider-Man and a 70% Avengers in an Avengers movie, that's when it's good. And I agree. Like, I love, like, a lot. Like, I love it when, you know,
He's so respectful.
yeah. So, and well, and I mean, we get into that a little bit later when he's like, yeah, speaking of loyalty or whatever, and he comes in and he's like, I thought I told you to go home or whatever. He's like, actually, the suit did it, so technically it's your fault. And then that look on Tony's face is like, you little fucking shit, I'm gonna beat you. He's like, now I gotta hear it.
I love when like he reaches over to to give him the hug. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong movie. That's
That
the
was
other one.
Homecoming.
Was it Homecoming?
Yeah.
Oh, that still cracks me up. He's just, I mean, the kid's uncle died 6 months ago. He's got nobody, and he finally feels like some close of semblance to something. And you
Dude won't
fucking
even
shit.
call him back or give him a hug.
It's, everyone just shits on this kid, dude. God damn it.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, like, even later on in the movie, I mean, the dude has no idea what's going on. He's fighting Thanos. Thanos. He's sitting there like Weapon. He's like, I don't know you. Like when he with the Guardians and stuff. Like, Thanos is throwing a freaking moon, and he's like, I don't. Here, I got you. I got you. I don't know who you are. I don't know everybody's names yet. I'm sorry. And he's just like, it's just like, oh God, Peter, it's so great.
Or
It's so
he's talking
great.
to Doctor Strange. He's like, I'm Doctor Strange. He's like, oh, we're using code names now. Oh, I'm Spider Man. Like, God, God damn it! Like, it's just so he's so out of his element. No matter what he does, it's like, and he plays it perfect. Like he's great. Like he really is. And again, like these are the things where the other two Spider Men, they don't hold a candle. And again, I love them for what they had, but this is where even Tom's movies fail because they don't have those elements of the bigger scope of the universe. You know, they were fun in each of their movies and each of the elements, but they don't have the larger scope of the universal things going on. You know, because you're right. He's sitting there, you know, saving people, and you know, I got you, I got you, I got you. Oh shit, you know, like again, he has no idea what he's doing. He's just, all right, let's go.
Well, it's like in Civil War. He's like, Mr. Stark, what am I supposed to do? He's like, web him up, like we talked about. He's like, oh yeah, right, okay. Like it's just like, yeah, no, it's he's like this perfect disaster in in these Avengers movies, and I love it. I mean, even in Endgame, when we'll get to, like, I mean, he's got all these moments, and that's what as I said, that's a spot. And as I said, but even in the Homecoming movies and stuff like that, that's the stuff I want to see. Is
Yeah.
like him stumbling through these villain encounters, because he's not a professional. He's
No,
not some cocky superhero. He's not military trained like Captain America, and he's
no.
not like Black Widow and Hawkeye, who's had tons of spy experience. He's not a Norse god. No, he's Peter Parker. And honestly, you know who really pulls this off really well, but is not Spider-Man? Scott Lang, the
Yeah,
Ant-Man.
yeah. No, those two. I think those two would have like really perfect chemistry together. Like, I mean, because they're so funny. Just the your average Joe. You know, your you know, especially when he comes back from you know, in Endgame, you know, Scott, when he's like looking around like, what the hell's going on here? Like, I mean, it's the reaction you and I would have,
Yeah,
you know, Scott Lang is the perfect middle-aged guy like you and me, where Peter's more of the teenage guy over his, you know, out of his element. You know, it's like both those guys are respectively the average guy, or, you know, your average Joe Blow, you know, what would they do, you know? And that's perfect, you know, because it's usually not exaggerated. It's just a little bit of sarcasm, but like, what the hell is this, you know? Like, oh man. You know, it's those two, I think, are probably my two favorite characters in the MCU, just because of I can relate to those two. You know, they're fun characters. They're people who, even without their costumes, you root for them because they're the underdog, you know. They're a lot more fun than like fucking Batman, I'll tell you that. And
yeah.
they used to be
Well,
my favorite
Batman, you always
hero.
look to have all the answers. Like he's like
Yeah.
Iron Man. Like you want them to have all the answers. But it's so much fun to watch, Spider-Man stumble through everything. Is like, hey, you ever seen this movie called Aliens? And like I love it how like the arms, like, and like when they blow the hole in the side of the ship and they all fly out, and Spider-Man has no idea. Like these things come out and grab the side of the wall. He's like, yes. He's like, oh God, I thought I was dead. Like it's not like he did. It's not like he like
He lucked
made
out.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's not like he actually made it happen. That planned it out. No, he just it
well,
just lucked out.
well, I love his response in Civil War when he's talking about you know, the Star Wars movie, and like, how old is
Yeah,
this kid? Like, it's just, again, it's constant. Like, everyone's constantly ragging on this kid. It's like, you know, and he's like, man, no, guys, come on, man. Like, he's that little kid that's like 10 feet behind you, you know, running to catch up to you, and everyone's like, man. But you know, again, he brings it in Infinity War. I mean, he brings it, man. He's fighting right alongside with Thanos, man, and at the end of that movie, when he fucking dies, like, that is probably the most. Um,
I actually have a controversial thought on that. I don't talk about this very often, but go ahead, finish your statement.
you know, it's, to me, I think it's the it's tragic. You know, because you know, Tony's the one that brought him there. Um, you know, takes that responsibility for, you know, I mean, this kid, and then he gets him killed. And it's someone that we, you know, for a lot of us, Spider-Man, you know, Tobey Maguire, we may not see Tom as our Spider-Man per se. You know, we may see Tom, or I mean, Tobey or Andrew, but you know, Spider-Man, you know, that character. You know, killing off Spider-Man in this movie is very symbolic. You know, even if it's not the actor per se, but Spider-Man. And when you see uh, when you see uh, Tony, the reaction to him, like, it's on so many levels. It hits us because Spider-Man was, for a lot of us, is what brought us to superhero. And then the weight that this guy feels, like, it's just so tragic. you know, and especially for a kid who, you know, we root for. You know, it's unfair on so many levels, you know, but it's great storytelling. You know, it needed to happen to put this movie over the top. But go ahead.
Spider-Man went out like a bitch, is what I think. Um, so here's my thoughts on this. I didn't like it in the initial viewing. Tom Holland did a great job acting it. Don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
he acted the hell out of it. Um, but Spider-Man is not one of those that worries about himself more. Spider-Man is like I like him being like, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. That's not Spider-Man to me. That's not Peter Parker. Peter Parker would be more worried about, oh my God, what's Aunt May gonna do? I can't leave her like Ben. You know what I mean? Like I feel like and I get it, he's a kid, but Spider-Man has always been the person who thinks about everybody else other than himself first. Period. Like everybody else. And for him to just like go and cry to Mr. Stark and even if he was more worried about the universe than himself, but he just laid there and he's like Mr. Stark, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And I'm like, that's not Peter Parker. And I understand he's a teenage kid, yada yada. I understand that. But the Spider-Man that I grew up with was always someone who just was more worried about everything else other than himself, you know?
S-
So for him to sit there and just worry about himself, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm out. Like I was really out at that point. I didn't care that they killed him. I didn't care that they dusted him. That was fine. I was like, okay, hey, cool. And I knew he was coming. As soon as people started getting dusted, I'm like, okay, they're coming back in the next movie. I'm not stupid. I've read Infinity Gauntlet.
what?
Yeah,
You knew? You liar!
I
Lie! You
knew. Oh my
prove
god, you should have seen how many
what?
people were like so pissed at the end of that movie. They were like, "What?" I'm like,
How do you
"Guys,
not
what?
know?
Haven't you read Infinity Gauntlet?" Everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, Infinity Gauntlet starts with Thanos snapping and people start going away. you know? I'm like, come on, y'all. They just brought Black Panther out. They just brought Spider-Man in. Like for reals. Like if they would have dusted the original cast, like Iron Man, Captain America, I might have believed they might not bring them back as an easy out for those original ones. But no, like for them dusting all those newer people, I'm like, yeah, no, they ain't that ain't happening. They're coming back.
See,
Um,
for me, I love your take. I think, I mean, I still stand by what I stand. I think it's tragic. I think, you know, for a kid who is out of his element, who's been constantly out of his element, like, I mean, and he's alone, and his only, you know, mentor who's been there since Ben died, like he reaches out to him because it's like, I mean, you're in the last moments of your life, like what do you do? And he's sitting there looking at you in the face, and you feel like you've let him down. You know, I mean, to me, it's like it's your last moment to reach out. So I get that, but I have to say I equally love your take on it. I think it's something I never considered. I mean, I think it's probably on his mind. I mean, I never doubted he thought of that. But to me, I just felt that when you have your mentor looking you in the face and you're on death's door, like, fuck, man, I failed him. Like
well, but I don't think he didn't know he was on death's door at that point. They didn't know what was happening. Like it's not like he got stabbed through the chest and he was like, I'm dying. Like he knew he felt weird, but he's just like he didn't like and I mean I don't even know if he saw the other guys get dusted away yet or not, but he's just like I
you
and
think he
I
might
could
have you think he might have just had indigestion?
no, probably more just like hey, something's wrong.
Uh,
But like I really feel like he should have more been like hey, he's like oh god, and he's like holding his chest, but he's just like did we get him? Did we get Thanos to, what's going on? Like, what is, and then that's when kind of things start going downhill. But I don't like the fact that he's stumbling up to Mr. Stark. I don't feel so, and I get it. It's heartbreaking. And all of the audience who don't know Spider-Man from the comic books and stuff, they're all like, oh my God. But for me, I'm just like, oh, this little bitch. I swear to
well,
God.
it kind of goes back to what you were saying about how all the villains are kind of Iron Man knockoff and or Iron Man, you know, centric, you know, and here Spider Man is like reverting back to the Iron Man mentality, you know. So I kind of understand, like, well, Yeah, instead of thinking about Aunt May, it kind of reverts back to let's focus on Iron Man. So
Yeah.
I kind of get that. Like again, I don't have a problem with it, but I completely love the fact of where you're coming from because man, that's completely understandable and completely true to the character. So I get that. I get that. So let's go to Endgame.
Oh yeah. Boom,
Endgame.
boom, thwip, thwip, bang, bang, pop, pop. Whoa! Hi, I'm Peter. There we go. That's Endgame for him.
You forgot the snap.
What about the snap?
You forgot the snap. The Hulk snap that brings them back.
Yeah, I know. That's what but after that, that's what
Oh, okay, okay. I was about to say we got to
actually I
start it.
do with Endgame, I did want to start off by talking about Tony's reaction to because his first reaction to seeing Captain America was not anger, was not, that came later.
Oh, yeah,
But he said his first words out of his mouth is like, "I lost the kid,"
yeah.
and like Cap knew because it, whether they like it or not, Spider-Man is this like in between for Captain America and Iron Man. What? Ew. What? You okay there?
So when you were like when Tony said I lost the kid, I was just thinking it would have been funny if Cap would have said which one. Like that would have been like really fucked up. And for some reason, it was funny in my it was really funny in my head, and I was just like, God, that would have been fucked up. Which one? Like, oh, go ahead.
But like Tony's reaction to like just basically because Spider-Man, even like Captain America connected with Spider-Man too in Civil War. I felt like because obviously they had the Queens Brooklyn thing, like because like Steve knew that that's who he was talking about. And I always felt like that there was this and I'm really sad that we will never get a movie where we see uh Cap and Spider well Steve Rogers and Steve Rogers and Spider-Man together, just because like just because in Infinity War they never crossed paths again. you know in Endgame they didn't really cross paths again.
Yeah.
And so and then by the end of Endgame he Cap's retired. So, but Captain America and Spider-Man have a long history in the comic books. I mean, it goes through Maximum Carnage. It even involves the Red Skull and his parents. Peter's parents. So there's a long history between Cap and Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's like, and even during Civil War in the comic books, the person that sided with Tony and then realized that what Tony was doing was wrong and went to join Cap was Spider-Man. Spider-Man was the tipping point in Civil War for the moral compass. You know, so so for that moment it's just like that point really got me because I'm just like because Spider-Man means so much more to Cap and Iron Man than just like that plucky sidekick. He is that perfect amount, in my opinion. He is the perfect amalgamation of those two characters, like the genius of Iron Man, and the pure of gold heart of Spider or of Captain America into one, and that's Spider-Man, in my opinion. Like that's why I'm always like, I wish in Civil War there would have been a moment. And I know there wasn't time for it. I get it, especially since it was him just coming into the universe. But I
Right.
wish there was a moment where Spider-Man did walk away from Tony Stark and join Spider-Man or join Captain America, because that was a very powerful moment in the comic books. Because in the comic books, Spider-Man revealed his true identity to the world because he trusted in Iron Man. And then he decided to switch sides even after that fact. So I don't know where I was going with this, but it's just to me, when Cap and Iron Man talk about Spider-Man, it always, because he is like, and that's what it frustrates me when people are like, "Oh, Spider-Man's the new Iron Man," and I say, "No, Spider-Man's the new Captain America. He may have the tech, but he is the new moral compass of that team.
Yeah.
He is the pure innocence of that team." And that's why I hate it when people compare him to Iron Man. I'm like, no, he's not like Iron Man. He has the tech, yes, but if you look at his personality, his innocence, his morality. He is Captain America of that team. And I'm not saying anything against Sam Wilson. Sam Wilson's also a great Captain America. By no means am I saying taking anything away from Sam Wilson, but on a moral compass wise, that's where I feel like a lot of the moral compassing from Captain America that is gone now because of Steve Rogers is now going to come from Spider-Man, and it needs to.
Well, you're absolutely right.
And I took that all out of one line.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, to me, it boils down to it's why Peter's death is what boils over everything Iron Man's feeling. And when he says that one line, liar, I don't think it would. If it wasn't for Peter dying, I don't think we would have got that scene from both those two. Because I mean, Tony holds a lot of things in. He may throw facts in your face and then walk away and be like, chew on that, bitch. But I mean, he took that personal enough to where he ripped out his own thing. Was like, there you go. I mean, he ripped out his own heart.
Well, I don't think that was his heart at that point. He had already had it surgically removed.
Oh, did he? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, still, it's very symbolic for. I mean, to me, the symbology is like, to hell with you.
Yeah.
And all that stemmed from what Peter. I mean, it tortured the guy. So even though Peter's not there, the reaction of that impact. Personally, I think we needed more of, well, of course, Aunt May's gone at that point. So I was gonna say, I think we should have seen Aunt May's reaction to the snap, but she was gone too because she doesn't age. You see that in the.
Well, I don't think Marissa Tomei ages anyway. I mean, she's in her mid-50s and she still looks like she's Aunt Hottie in her 30s.
Yeah, and I don't buy that. Again, I think she's his older sister.
I love how, and I know we're getting on a rabbit trail, but like I love how in Homecoming they threw glasses on her to make her look older. I kid you not. The day of shooting, they're like, "Here, put these glasses on to make you look more like an ant-like figure."
Didn't help.
No, I'm like, oh, now she's hot librarian. Thanks.
Oh, she got shh. Oh, lady, that's how pornos start. But no,
Sorry, it took me a second.
But no, the whole thing, with Endgame, he didn't overstay his welcome. He was in a bunch of action scenes, which is really what we needed. Then he had the one scene where he's like, "Hey, Mr. Stark," it's exactly what we needed for him. I mean, basically, there's really not much to say except, he helps save the day, and exactly what we need, which is action sequences, great CGI galore.
Well, and also just, I mean, that was when Tony Stark walked up and hugged Peter. That wasn't for Spider-Man. That was not a moment for Spider-Man. That was a Iron Man moment.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like, "Oh, it's so great," blah blah blah. But I'm like, okay, that did nothing for Spider-Man. That was all for Iron Man's character, and that's fine. It's an Avengers movie. It should be about Iron Man, and that's fine. I get that. But yeah, no, it didn't do anything for me. It didn't do anything for Peter besides, oh, he finally got his hug. Call back, okay. There wasn't a lot in that action sequence that helped the Spider-Man of it besides his, as you aptly said in Infinity War, he's out of his freaking element and he's fighting hordes of it. I mean, because if you think about it, he's never seen an alien army before, like like in the thick of it. Like he wasn't in Wakanda when they were fighting. He was on Titan fighting Thanos. One person. This is the first time where he is in like a major battle where two battle lines are drawn and there are people fighting.
It's just like somebody dropping into the battle in New York and going, "What? Oh, all right, let's go." And it's the same thing. To me, I enjoyed to put it in perspective. It was as enjoyable to me as going back to like I don't know if you remember the DVD for the first Spider-Man movie for Tobey Maguire, and it was just the same replay of Spider-Man swinging through the city, and it was just on auto loop, over and over and over, and it was enjoyable because you're like, I mean, there's not much dialogue, but it's just fun CGI and it's great to watch. I mean, it's great, you can just sit there and eat your popcorn while you're just sitting here watching this on loop. And it was great. And that's what everything in Endgame was. You know, of course, you had a couple cool jokes from Peter, but nothing really monumentous. He didn't really add too much to the story. And I know there's some people out there say no, because he gave this to this, and that was important. Okay, whatever. But I mean,
it was intergalactic hot potato at that point.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Clint had it, then Black Panther had it, then Spider-Man had it, then Captain
Yeah.
Marvel had it. Like,
Everybody had their part, and it's, you know, that it
yeah,
was nothing specifically Spider-Man. So I mean, to me, I would equate it to, it's the same thing as like that on loop Spider-Man, you know,
mhm.
CGI, which is great, but nothing
It
story
added
specific.
to it, but it wasn't anything
Yeah.
breaking to
No.
the battle.
So going to Far From Home.
Yeah.
You come 5 years
Well,
after.
before we get into Far From Home, I do want to make a mention about Tony's death, because that was a big part, you know, because you had you had Rhodey, who got there first, and he's like, and Rhodey knows, he's like, oh, you're done, dude. Like, I'm so sorry. And then you got and then Spider-Man shows up, and he's just like, oh, Mr. Stark, Mr. Stark. That was a lot better than the snap, I felt, only because, as I said, he knew what was going on, and he felt like this is where he felt like he failed Tony, because for some reason he feels like he's, failed his mentor. And he can't do anything about it. That is when Peter Parker is at his worst, is when he's like, I can't save everyone. And that is something that Peter goes through all the time in the comic books. They have arcs where he's just like, no one dies. No matter what, no one dies. And because he can't, even if it's not his fault, he has a hard time living with himself, with that. And so that, that moment there, that was one of the moments that stuck with me more than the Infinity War death, was Tony's reverse. The reverse was Tony's death. And Peter's being a little bit of a douche. He's keeping Pepper away from her husband. But I mean, he doesn't know that at that point. But that was one of the moments where it's like, I feel like Peter really kind of, and they do a great job carrying this over into the next movie that we are now transitioning into, which is Far From Home, is Peter's sense of loss and not being able to save everybody. And I really wish they would kind of get into that. Actually, you know what? And actually, in one of the trailers, he says it. He says, I don't think I can save everybody. And you can see it in his face. And that's why I think I'm going to like this movie, because I feel like they're focusing more on Peter as Peter, not as Peter cleaning up everybody else's mess, which has been the other two movies, clean up Tony's mess.
Yeah.
But I mean, even he says, I can't save everybody. He wants to save Doc Ock. He wants to save Electro. He wants to save Green, well, maybe not Green Goblin, but he's like, I can't save everybody. I can't. And that's one of those things that I'm just like, oh my God, like, yes, that's one of the lines I've been waiting for, is like his absolute remorse in the fact that he is human and he can't save everybody. So anyway.
Well, I loved in I love the fact that you had a hero in Mysterio, and Tony finally feels, or not Tony, Spider-Man, he he looks around, and he's dealing with those issues of, I don't have Iron Man, I don't have Tony, I'm dealing with a lot, because we never saw the Ben stuff, the fallout from that. So this is kind of our, we're dealing with loss, and I don't mind even though it is, Tony, it's Iron Man. I don't mind that, because he is a haunted character, right? If it's Uncle Ben, or if it's Gwen, or if it's letting Norman Osborn die, or
George Stacy, or
whoever recently died in his life, that's who he's tormenting over. So I love the fact that he looks up and he sees Iron Man. I love the relationship again between him and Ned, the kids on the bus. The relationship, it doesn't feel like anything's repeating. It feels like a very organic and continuous move forward for these kids. her knowing the Spider-Man, that he's Spider-Man finally, that's a huge weight off everything. I love the what was what was the monkey? What
Oh, Monkey Boy? Was it?
I don't remember. I don't remember. Is whatever the Spider-Man monkey name was that was overseas. That they said, like, I love that because for the longest time, everybody that got a chuckle out of everybody in the audience. You know,
Oh my
um,
God, there's actually a Spider-Man monkey.
yeah, that's
He's from the Spider-Man Apes universe. What? Night Monkey was the name.
Night Monkey. That's it. That's it. Night
Oh my
Monkey.
God, dude, there's
Um,
some fan art here. Oh boy. Okay, anyway, back to the topic.
but
Night
but I
Monkey.
love the fact that, like, even that was a figure. The fact that they in these different films, again, they're giving us stuff that, again, that you have action figures of. You don't have to go down and buy an action figure of, well, what's this random one of. You're like, no, I saw this in the movie. And that's the beauty of what these movies are giving us, is different versions of Peter, but they actually make sense for what they're doing. um and Mysterio wasn't a necessarily bad villain. It's just, to me, I felt like this was he didn't feel fully fleshed out to me. um it felt a little bit two dimensional to me. um
Well, and it was another Iron Man leftover.
yeah.
Like
to
that's my big thing.
to me, it just it if he was the thing that really, when he starts getting the attack drones and the like, to me, that's where you kind of lost. Like, if it was something a little bit more smaller in scale that was fucking with Peter, I would have bought that. The glasses thing I did not like, because it's like, look, Tony left this to you. You should guard that with your life. To me, that was the one fault of the movie, was this is not a lesson that you should have to learn, even if you're a kid. um don't give it to him. And I didn't even buy that from the perspective of he's a kid. um to me, that was the only thing where it's like, this I don't like. And I don't like the fact that we have all this technology that it just so happens, technology that seems to be like, if the good guys have it, the bad guys easily overpower it, but now that the bad guys have it, the good guys are struggling to keep ahead. Stuff like that in movies really bother me, and that's what this seemed to be. um and it
It's
just
like
seemed,
in video games, the boss when you fight him, and then the boss when you unlock him.
yeah.
It's yeah.
No, that's exactly it. And so, to me, this movie, it just seemed to do that to 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 fluff the time out of the movie, and I don't like that. So, to me, I could have done without this being um, a a bigger scale movie, where it's like, again, I think the more intimate Spider-Man movies should be smaller in scale, where when you get to the Avengers stuff, that's when it's bigger. And I think the fact that they tried to make Mysterio be this guy can replace the Avengers, no, that's not who Mysterio is. Like, that's, at least not that I think. I could be wrong.
No,
um
I agree with you. I think that the Mysterio was a bit. Mysterio has always been one of those villains that, and Jake Gyllenhaal did a good job
yeah,
portraying this.
this wasn't the actor, this was the script. I thought the
Yeah,
script was terrible.
but I really feel like that this movie needed to be on a smaller scale than what it was. The fact that Shield was involved, and the fact that Chameleon, or I'm not Chameleon. Mysterio has always been one of those villains that needs help. And this would have, and I'm not saying help as in like, but I mean, he's not a menacing villain. Like, he can cast his illusions and everything, but that's why I always felt like Mysterio would have been a good one to pair up with, like, Chameleon, who is a master of martial arts, or Craven, who, Mysterio uses the illusions, but Craven's the one who's doing the hunting. Like, he's the one who's doing the physicality. Mysterio's not one to do the physicality. And yeah, you're right. Like, the drones and all that, it's just kind of like, okay, like, it was a bit much. It was a bit too much.
To me,
Um,
this felt like an Avengers movie with just change the wallpaper, make it Spider-Man, and let's go. And to me, that's not what this movie needed to be. To me, if like I enjoyed the aspect of, hey, this guy's coming from another universe, and Shield is interested because he's kind of tricking them. I liked that aspect of the story. Where I feel like it fell apart was the trickery of all this other stuff where it's like that isn't even in this universe you're really stretching what you're asking me to believe.
Well, and on top of that, we go back to the whole friendly neighborhood part. We've
Yeah,
barely ever seen him in the friendly neighborhood of New York. I mean, because
yeah,
it's very friendly there. Um, like he's globetrotting.
yeah,
He's got like he's on a jet. He's going to London. He's going to Italy. And I mean, there are stories where Spider-Man does go around the world, but if this was an Avengers thing, like if he was going around the world with the Avengers, okay, fine, I get it. Not Spider-Man. Spider-Man, it needs to be localized, and I'm sorry, like in the beginning, Spider-Man. Now, if he was like 30-year-old Spider-Man with Parker Industries, and I mean I don't know if you know that from the comic books, but he had his own business for a while,
yeah,
Parker Industries. He was totally Tony Stark in it for a while. Okay, I get it. Like then we can have globetrotting Spider-Man. I'm okay with that. But it's just like friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He just happens to be in Europe, and then of course, there's Mysterio in Europe and all these other places, and it's just too many happenstances, too much globetrotting. And even if it was more like one place overseas, no, we're doing the European tour at this point, and it's just like,
yeah,
and they of course, oh well, and I felt like they picked the name and then they made the movie around it. They're like, well, it's called Spider-Man Far From Home. Okay, well, what are we going to do with that? Let's put him in Europe. Like,
yeah,
no, like that. I felt like they picked the name and then they made the movie around it, and that's why I was just like, This is dumb. This is absolutely dumb."
yeah. To me it to me like I said, to me this felt like an Avengers movie with just a Spider-Man skin. And you
And
know
one person, well,
yeah,
one person in Nick Fury.
yeah, yeah. And I don't mind. I mean, I don't know if you watch The Flash on CW.
Mhm.
Well, then you're aware of the Armageddon storyline that they're doing for this season.
Yes, I haven't watched any of it yet because I'm waiting for my nerd night so that we're actually going to start watching it. I think tomorrow on our nerd night. So because me and a couple friends get together, you can spoil it. I don't care.
It's it is
Oh, is it bad?
hot garbage.
Oh man.
Here's my take on it. And Josh and I have a show, and I welcome you. Join up. Like we usually have it randomly during the like 2:30 or something, but we'll gladly change it for a Sunday night or Saturday night. Like but we'll have it like we have it once a week. But we will gladly wait for you because I'm more the merrier. But we'll gladly have you on if you watch it. Um, but it's called WTF? What the Flash?
Yeah, I've
And
heard you talk about it before.
yeah, I mean, you can watch it. They're usually about maybe an hour long, but we sit there and I mean, it's just like you and me doing this, which is friends getting together, bullshitting about it, fucking around, talking, laughing, joking. And the only reason I keep up now with the Flash is just because I like laughing with him about it. But it's very much um, this quote unquote crossover or event is not really that. It's just, oh, in this episode, this person will show up from this show. Now the next episode is this person from this show shows up.
Oh, I
Now
hate
this one,
that.
and
It's
and
it's,
to
it's serialized guest starring is what it
yeah,
is.
and to me it's like
Or I'm sorry, episodic guest starring.
yeah,
When it's
and
supposed to be some big 5-part event, you've got like one
yeah,
person, yeah, like
and
episodically. Yeah, I hate
it is
that.
such, and if you hadn't put the name Armageddon on it, you wouldn't like it is not one, it's not an event. Two, it doesn't feel special. It feels really slow, and it's such a slow burn. You forget that it's even on fire. It is so bad, and I don't say that in a, oh my god, this is it is more like, oh, this the acting is cringe. It's people act out of character and not in a way that, wow, this is really interesting. I wonder what's up. It's more of a, God, this sucks. Why am I still watching? And that's what a lot of a lot of the movies from like well, this one specifically is, in the first one you have Iron Man show up in a Spider-Man movie, and then Nick Fury shows up in a Spider-Man movie, and then third one, Doctor Strange shows up in an Iron Man or in a Spider-Man movie. Like, you have people show up that is just a guest spot,
Hmm.
but is it really a needed thing? And that's the problem with the Flash. And you'll find out, like, when you get to it, we're 3 episodes in because fourth one comes out next week. And it is a huge glaring issue, and it's very formulaic, and that's sadly what the Tom Holland movies fall into, is guest spots.
The
I
only
hope they move away from it after No Way Home. I hope they move away from that.
Well, and here's the thing though, is that I do understand, I do partly understand why Doctor Strange is in No Way Home is because the multiverse.
Yeah,
Doctor Strange is the gateway to the multiverse. If now, and I agree with you, it is. It's like episodic guest starring. If Iron Man and Nick Fury and all them weren't in those original two movies, I would be 100% okay with Doctor Strange being in this one because they're delving into the Spider Verse. Doctor Strange is a very good character to, but you're right. It's kind of like, oh, here comes another guest star character.
yeah. If we hadn't already had it twice, this would be perfect. But
Yeah.
sadly, we've had it twice before, and it feels repetitive at this point. But you can't do this story without this. And sadly, this story is one that we really want because of what's going on. So it's one of those necessary evils. But
Yeah.
it's like, after this, I hope we don't keep doing this, because it's really one of those, like, let Peter stand on his own, you
Mhm.
know?
Well, and that's why I say is like one of my favorite parts of Far From Home is the warehouse scene where where Peter's in the warehouse and he's he's trying to fight Mysterio, but all the illusions are set up and all of that. And why couldn't you do that in New York? Like that's
Yeah.
one of my favorite. That was one of my favorite scenes out of that whole thing. And it's like, well, that you could have done that anywhere.
Yeah.
Like and they gave us like 5 minutes of swinging in New York at the end, and it's like okay, thanks. You know what? You're pandering to me now.
That felt the most like a Spider-Man movie out of the whole thing, was him
Exactly.
swinging through. Yeah, no, and it's, I think we're gonna get that now in No Way Home, because you see him swinging through, you see him on the rooftop, you see him. I mean, you see so much. I think we're finally gonna get him in New York, and then all of a sudden, all these other realities break through, and you're like, the sky is falling. But anyway, we're an hour and a half in, man.
I
So
know. Well, that's what I was like. I'm like, well, I guess So, I mean, our countdown continues. We actually have. Do we want to do another one of these
I,
before?
I, I, I was thinking about that just now. I think, me personally, and you can say no, let's keep going and do our ideas for what we want. But I'd be willing to come back next Saturday and do, 9, 10 o'clock, whatever, and do what we would like, because we would have realistically like another week before we even get to No Way Home. If you want to do another one next weekend and keep this train going, I'll do a train with you, man.
All right. All right. Yeah. I mean, we can. Yeah, we can chat about it. I mean, as I said, but usually this podcast is usually like once a month. But I mean, with it being Spider Month, I mean, obviously we've got so much crap going on right now. We're just counting
It's
down the days.
You can trap me in your web anytime, man.
I webbed myself. Um, all right. Well, V man, thank you very much again for joining me. I appreciate you uh, sifting through the cobwebs of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies and the MCU movies. We
Absolutely.
probably could have done the Holland movies today and the MCU movies next week. That probably would have, if we had any like insight or
Well,
foresight or
realistically, I think doing all of the movies this time, and even though it's a little bit more extended of a show this time, and saving next week for the hype, because I mean, we got this now. How many more trailers and our wants and our needs? I mean, it's kind of like, writing Santa the Christmas list. Like,
I
hey, this is
have
what I
wants
want.
and needs.
That this is a PG show. Damn it, you watch it.
What?
Um,
God damn it! What's your fucking mouth? We're gonna pull a DX over here.
it's fucking bullocks. You know, we miss you, Santa Claus. Come save us. Um, no, I think doing next week, like right before the show, like, hey, this is what we, screw spoilers, screw what we've seen, like this is what we personally want out of the films. Like this is, because I mean we're doing, basically three generations of Spider-Man. You
Hmm.
know, I'd love to find out, why do you want that '70s Spider-Man to come back? Cheeto. Why do you want that Japanese
Because he
Spider-Man to
looked.
come in here?
Oh, because of the mech. We need that Mechzilla.
I'd like. I mean, to me, I just think it'd be great to be like, what are our personal wants, and then what are our thoughts on what we've seen so far, and expectation, well, realistic expectations, not those fucking memes that have, all these other things in the kitchen sink in it. So I think, I think a general conversation about,
I think we should have a whole week dedicated to talking about how hot Aunt May is. All of them. All three of
uh,
them.
that's on my Santa Claus wish list.
You just want that poster of of Tobey Maguire's Aunt May right above
That's
your
it.
right on your
That's it.
ceiling.
No, I've already got that. That's,
Oh.
it's mirrored. So, if I roll over, it's there. If I,
Oh God.
it's a gift that keeps on giving, baby.
We need to
Mm.
stop now. It's
Oh,
late.
I got a whole drawer full of butterscotch candies. So I'm like, rolling around in my mouth. We can keep going if you want. Like
No,
it's
let's stop. Let's stop. Okay. Everybody, thank you very much for watching. If you've made it to this point in the broadcast, you are a trooper and we
hashtag
appreciate you.
hashtag butterscotch candy.
Hashtag butterscotch venom.
Wait, so hold on. You don't want Rhino. You don't want Rhino Butler, but you'll do butterscotch venom. Like what? What is? I'll take it.
Butler. Wait, what'd you say? Butler Rhino? Like what?
No. Rhino Butler.
Rhino
It's
Butler.
so we have Butler Venom, we have Rhino Butler, and now you have butterscotch venom.
It's a multiverse, baby.
It's. I feel like these are gonna be ornaments on my Christmas tree at one point, because it's gonna be like 10 years from now. I'm gonna be missing Cheeto because we're not friends anymore, and I'm gonna be hanging this up on my Christmas tree because I have no friends at this point. It's just
Oh, I will
it's
always be your friend, Vance. You
uh,
you can't get rid of me. I'm
it's
sorry.
because my Aunt May posters and my butterscotch candies in my drawer.
Yeah.
It's
Keep in mind that I've been friends. I'm a hard friend to get rid of. I've been friends with Zam for like 12 years now. So just keep that in mind. Let
it's
that roll around in there.
because the Santa suit. I get it. I get it.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, all right, everybody. We are wrapping this up. Thank you very much for going down this journey with us and with Vance. Thank you very much for tolerating me for this hour and a half, talking about all of the Spider-Man franchises leading up to No Way Home. Next week we will be back. I guess we're going to talk about what we want from this movie and how many butterscotch candies we can fit into Vance's mouth at one time. With all that being said, thank you very much for watching. If we are NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you've probably never kind of maybe heard of, who knows? And if you would like, please give us a like. If you would like, please give us a like. Okay. And leave a comment on your favorite, butterscotch venom moments, and consider subscribing if you're not already to NerdTube. The greatest. I already did that. Okay, we're gonna go. Bye, everybody.